For more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mandel. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
When we last joined you on Thursday night for the Illegal Curve post-game show following the Jets and the Blackhawks, at some point during that broadcast, my very dear friend, Mr. Ginsburg, said that he was engaging in anaerobic activities, to which Dave and I just sort of smiled and smirked and probably moved on with our lives, only to be informed this morning by Scardy that anaerobic activities means without oxygen, so it is highly unlikely, Mr. Ginsburg, that you are engaging in anaerobic exercise. And
That's
with
false.
that,
I was shoveling and I wasn't breathing and I needed oxygen, so that was anaerobic activity. So oh man, shoveling the first time was a lot easier. I mean, like most good Manitobans, you have to do an initial shovel. You don't wait for the snow to end. You have to go out there and do a pre-shovel, right? Drew wouldn't know that because he has a team of people that plow his property. But
you know who my team of people is? When did it snow? When was the snowstorm? Sort of Thursday into Friday, something like that.
Yeah.
So I woke up Friday morning, earlier than I usually do. I was, got dressed, was on my way outside to shovel, only to find out that my incredible wife had already done the shoveling.
Whoa, are you? Is this? Are you the Counselor Reyes right now? Like, what's going on here?
I'm not Counselor Reyes.
Why did you should have taken a picture of Laura?
I should have. First of all, I think isn't he an MLA? I'm not even sure he's a counselor. I think he's an MLA. I didn't take a picture of her, but I do want to point out and give full marks to her that she not only shoveled first thing in the morning, but because she beat me home after I was picking up the kids, she shoveled in the afternoon. As
Laura is a saint. You're a lucky man, Drew. Don't ever forget that.
And then she followed that up by making a delicious meal. So I am definitely a very lucky man.
Don't ever forget that. She's a saint.
Yes.
Good on Laura.
Good on Laura is right. And with that nonsense, starting off the show, we're in a good mood. We say good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. And for all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to a game day edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's going to be a fun one in downtown Winnipeg, a buzz in the air anytime the Philadelphia Flyers come to town. Not one of the original six, but in my books, for all intents and purposes, they sort of are, especially with their long time ties.
Well, they've been around since 1967, so they've been around for what is that? Let me do the math. What is that? 60 years, something like that.
Yeah, 62, but close enough. We'll give you a pass there. No, hang on, that's not right.
I'm like, not 62.
That's 57 years. Sorry, I did addition instead of subtraction there.
It's not like my dad's a former math professor or anything.
Well, clearly the apple didn't fall far from the tree, except it did fall very far. And
Ariella has the math gene.
Drew is a rotten apple from 7-Eleven. Let's be real.
There you go. That's the apple he eats. In any event, what I was saying is, of course, it's going to be a fun night in downtown Winnipeg. The Jets and the Flyers, which means that illegalcurve.com and this show will be your resource all day long for everything going on between the Jets and Philadelphia. Lots to keep an eye on at morning skate for the Jets, as that'll get underway in about 25 minutes time. We'll see who hits the ice, because we know there are injury concerns and there are a lot of question marks for the Jets entering tonight's game. Mark Scheifele. So we'll start with him after he left early in the second period on Thursday night against the Chicago Blackhawks. The official diagnosis, of course, is lower body injury, and it's a day-to-day time frame. So he's not ruled out for today's game against.
Did you guys see what Joe Pascucci
Flyers.
tweeted out, by the way?
I didn't. What did Joe tweet?
Are you know the video about Robertson?
Did he get? Is that who Scheifele got mixed up with?
Yeah, at the end of the first period.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, Joe Pascucci went back because remember on the post-game show we were trying to figure out if something happened, a few shifts earlier, and it looked like he got tied up with Robertson
as he was taking a shot. Yeah.
As he was taking a shot. So it still doesn't tell us exactly what it is, but it's safe to say that it's, what did we say, upper, lower body, groin, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But as Rick Bowness said, I mean, Dave knows because he was there yesterday. Rick Bowness said that, he took himself out of the game on purpose as a precaution, and we're not quite sure. There you go. I think we're going to play it here.
Yeah, we are going to play the video here. This courtesy of our good friend Joe Pascucci, of course. So you watch Scheifele.
He's about to get it when he gets the shot, just right here, and boom.
Oh.
You see his leg kind of.
Yeah. So it gets tangled up there.
Yeah.
Falls awkwardly to the ice. So Joe is speculating that
that's where it occurred.
The groin or the lower body injury may have occurred. So of course we
if you watch this through, because now if you can see, like, there's that point where Scheifele kind of takes a step to see how it's feeling, and then he looks okay because the period ends, and then he goes to check. Oh, this is the end. This is where he does that. He pulls up a little bit.
Yeah. That's in the second period where he
no, I know, but what I'm saying is in the first period, if you watch the end of that video, because I went back, I had the tape game recorded, so I watched it. And if you watch the end of that first, he kind of tests it a little bit after that collision. But then he goes straight at it because someone was going after Morrissey. So he looked fine. He came up for the second, took the face off, and then as you showed
it
on
was
the
Jason
video,
Dickinson, not Robertson.
Sorry, Dickinson. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
but
Jason Robertson doesn't play in Chicago.
When you said Robertson, I didn't want to say
it.
anything, Dave, and I was like, because the reality is, I mean, half the team was the Rockford Ice Hogs. So there could have been a Robertson in the lineup. I have no idea, but I think it was Jason Dickinson.
No, you're right. It was Dickinson. I got the Sun part right. But anyways, the point is that we weren't sure. We weren't sure. It was all speculation. Like I said, when we did the show, I said, watching it live, I thought when they gave up the 2-on-1, I thought that's where it took place. And that's where you could see he realized something was off. And as you said, as Rick Bowness told us yesterday, he said when Mike McIntyre of the Free Press said, that's a good thing that Scheifele took himself. He said it is a good thing. The way he pulled up when he was skating and the way he left the ice and didn't come back, he's a tremendous competitor, and those guys will fight through anything. So he took the precautionary route, and that was a smart thing to do. And look, none of us were expecting day-to-day, to be honest with you. I mean, everyone was certain it was going to be and again, when the team says day-to-day, it could still be week-to-week. Like, you never know what day-to-day is going to be. David Gustafsson traditionally is day-to-day, and that usually goes on. I mean, when was the last time he played? December 29th. So it's already been a few weeks for a guy who's dealing with something that seemed fairly inconsequential. But what I'm getting with Mark Scheifele is we weren't certain where it was going to go, and we weren't certain what was going to happen. And then what they do is they end up recalling Rasmus Kupari from the Moose. So he plays the one game against Belleville on Wednesday. And
are we going to give me my props here?
Yeah. We will give you
Thursday
your props.
night, we were talking about who could be called up. Brent Bellamy had in the chat, he was suggesting Brad Lambert. Who said that it could be Rasmus Kupari, this guy?
Well, who said it wouldn't be Brad Lambert? This guy, because I didn't think it was.
You guys both get all the dap in the world. You're both very smart.
Big brains, right, Drew?
Yeah,
big brains
are intimidating me as per usual. And also worth noting, of course, that Nikolai Ehlers left practice early as he's dealing with something upper body related. Yeah. And Cole Perfetti's not at 100%. So the option of him moving to center was sort of poo-pooed by Rick Bowness because he's dealing with a wrist injury, which would impact faceoffs.
Well, and the funny part, Bones was, sorry, Dave, I just wanted to say Bones was like just dropping like nugget after nugget. Because I don't think anybody like knew anything about the Cole Perfetti injury at all.
The best part about it was nobody knew even after Rick Bowness was speaking. But you got to remember, Dave,
you mean All-Star Rick Bowness?
All-Star Rick Bowness. But you got to understand, so we're sitting there in the Matt Frost Media Center. Rick Bowness does his media availability, of course, available on our YouTube channel, or on illegalcurve.com in the practice report. But the fact of the matter is, we're talking about Scheifele. Okay, that's significant. Then he mentions Ehlers, sorry. So he leaves, early and again, dealing with an upper body. Axel Sanfilipo, he gives an update saying he wasn't on the ice yesterday. He's still dealing with illness. So he, didn't skate yesterday. And so so what happens is we're in the work area of the Matt Frost, and it was actually just Scott Billick and I left at that point. And I'm listening to the video of Rick because I'm just, breaking up the topics on our YouTube channel. And I'm listening to him. And then I hear him say something about Cole Perfetti in his wrist. And I'm like, oh, that's significant. I'm like, I didn't even catch that when he mentioned because John Lew had asked him about who would potentially move to center if Mark Scheifele is not available. Mm-hmm. And he said, would it be Cole Perfetti? Would it be Gabriel Velarde? And then that's when Rick offered the idea of Cole Perfetti. But to be honest with you, we all missed it. And then I mentioned it to Scott, and then Scott was like, oh yeah, he did say that. And then we kind of went from there. But it was just you're right. Nobody was expecting him to kind of give that sort of level of detail because usually he's so caged. So I whether it was an inadvertent slip or not, regardless, it did give us a little insight into the fact that Cole Perfetti is dealing with something. And yes, look, it's the middle part of the season. Everybody in the league is dealing with something, but it was just something that we weren't aware of that Rick Bowness volunteered. And it's unusual, I would say.
And Drew, I'm not sure if you want to talk about, the potential, what the Jets might do if Scheifele and AJF are out of the lineup, but it's probably the most complex situation if you think about it, right? Because Gabe Vilardi is obviously playing so well with Scheifele and Ehlers, right? But also Dave Perfetti, who started the season as the 2C, he's been playing so well on the wing as well, right? So it's not I guess you could have Adam Lowry centering the top line, but then obviously, that affects the third line. So,
right.
I mean, first off, we don't know how many guys are going to be out of the lineup. It could be both Scheifele and Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, or they could both be in the lineup, right? So it's really tough to figure out what might happen because we don't know who might not be in the lineup.
Well, that's why morning skate, which will be starting in about 15 minutes, and the guys usually hit the ice a few minutes before that. Will
Dan
be so
Robertson's going to clear everything up, right, Drew?
Well, Dan Robertson's going to join us. Jets broadcaster is going to join us in about 15 minutes as well. But that's why there is sort of the elements of intrigue or questions, surrounding who the Winnipeg Jets are going to have available to them tonight. They're playing a Philadelphia Flyers team that has certainly been, I think, one of the surprises of the NHL so far this year. They're playing, they're still, third in the Metropolitan Division. They maybe have fallen off a little bit from where they were maybe 2-3 weeks ago, but they're still in a playoff spot, a team that nobody had any playoff expectations for this year. And we know that the drama surrounding Philadelphia from earlier this week involving Cutter Gauthier and Jamie Drysdale, we'll deal with that all in the bottom of hour number 2.
Drew, did you catch the Flyers Wild game last night by any chance?
I did. So for those of you who missed it, so it's the second half of a back-to-back for Philadelphia. And I think it speaks to how well John Tortorella has them believing, because they're down 3-1 to the Wild yesterday, and then they stage a pretty impressive comeback. Woe to be a Wild fan right now, culminating in a 4-3 overtime victory for the Flyers. So they come back from a 2-goal deficit to defeat the Minnesota Wild in St. Paul last night.
Just a few things, though, to note about that game. Ryan Hartman scored the second goal. It was a weak goal on Carter Hart. Carter Hart has he's had a bit of a tough season, and Samuel Urson, not a household name. We're going to ask Anthony Sanfilipo about Samuel Urson. Urson has as many wins this year as Carter Hart. So he's most likely Sam.
She scared the,
that was a nice little surprise. Oh, isn't that cute?
Hi.
How's it going? And Aaron.
Okay, you guys scared me.
Hey guys.
All of a sudden, somebody's touching me over here. And
Sam, do you think the Jets are going to win tonight?
Sammy, you think the Jets are going to win tonight? Yeah. Aaron says yeah. Sammy, what do you think? They're playing Philadelphia.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, Sam says yes as well.
Your kids, I already knew your kids were smart, but you don't bet against the Jets right now.
Love you.
So what I was going to say is that Carter Hart let in a weak goal, and the Wild went up 2-1. But for those who didn't see the game, Joel Farabee, he scored the winning goal in overtime.
On a power play, right?
Yes. Matt Zuccarello took a tripping penalty, and in late in the third period, I believe, or early in overtime. And anyways, Joel Farabee tipped a point shot in, and the Flyers won. But I believe, guys, the Wild have lost like 5 games in a row now at home. Like, they're really struggling.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that they were once, if they would have swept the Jets, they would have been 4 points back of Winnipeg, and they're currently 21 points back of Winnipeg. I mean, again, like, we're not surprised, but like, it is a remarkable turnaround from 2 weeks ago. So
the divergent paths that have been taken by the Jets and the Wild since 10, 11 days ago is incredible. To drop that far.
Guys, don't look now, but the Wild are only 21 points behind the Jets.
Yeah, but I mean, if you even
look at the Jets, Dave, that's a big point for them.
Fair point, Ez. But the fact of the matter is that even team like Dallas now is 7 points back of Winnipeg or something like that. So
Dallas lost last night to Nashville on home.
Nashville, don't look now. Nashville keeps that rolling. So but again, the Jets are currently on an 8-game winning streak. They're 14 points in 14 straight. This is a team that continues to chug along. So and by the way, I want to pick up on the point that KWB, Kenny's water bottle, just made. about Mark Scheifele. My anticipation for today would be that you're not going to rush him back. Why would you take a risk of doing anything that's going
Jets need the
to
points right now?
Yeah, exactly. So, you can afford to sit him. I mean, obviously, like I said, Rasmus Kupari clearly ready to go. I mean, he had some rust in the game. That camera angle in Belleville was atrocious. So when people were asking me yesterday at the skate how he looked, I'm like, I couldn't tell you. They were all ants. It was a terrible camera. But the fact of the matter is he got in a skate. They would have obviously liked him to play last night in Laval and again today in Laval before they recalled him. But he's clearly ready to go. And so they'll bring him back. And Rick Bowness did say yesterday that he anticipates Rasmus Kupari playing. And look, if Mark Scheifele can't go, then they'll ultimately, I would suspect they'll just go 11-7. Or if Anthony Sanfilipo, I should say, also can't go. But if they've got Rasmus Kupari and they've got enough forwards to go 12-6. And again, like I said, the way this team is chugging along, we talked about it with Cole Perfetti and Vladimir Mestikov yesterday, both, just that next man up mentality. And so we'll see if they can do it. But I just want to get the point, like in my if I was guessing, and like you said, we'll find out in 10 minutes where we can remove it from a guess. But I would think that they wouldn't take a risk.
I'm getting those vibes as well that Scheifele's not going to play. That's just a hunch.
Yeah.
But I don't think you say day to day unless there's a good chance that he might not play. Like you could easily just say, it's a game time decision. Because these guys, coaches, teams, they're very careful with. I mean, they know exactly what they're going to say. Rick Bowness knew exactly what question was going to be asked, right, Dave?
Yep.
So now, at the very least, it's 50-50.
So let's go on the presumption that Scheifele doesn't play for tonight's game. And I would agree with you, Dave, that it wouldn't surprise me if they went 11-7. They were almost going to go 11-7 on Thursday night against Chicago.
Logan Stanley took warm-up skate.
Right. And regardless, we can deal with the concept of Logan Stanley over Declan Chisholm in that role, another time during the show today. So if it is 11-7, how do you foresee, the line juggling occurring? Do you move somebody that's had a great deal of success on the wing up the middle, like a Gabe Vilardi, or do you try and maybe move a Lowry up? Do you leave maybe the second line intact with Nemesnikov? I mean, again, coaches usually defer to making as few changes as possible, at least to start a game. So how do you foresee the Jets sort of lining up to start tonight against Philadelphia, with the asterisk being that we expect Scheifele to not necessarily be in the lineup?
Are you talking to me?
I'm talking to you.
Oh,
well, no, Robert De Niro and Taxi Driver there.
Yeah, you talking to me? No, I mean, look, I think it's a good question, and I guess we could just save the segment for 15 minutes from now when we know the answer. But I guess, look, you're right. Rick Bowness was asked about that, and that's the problem. Like, we don't really have any sort of insight as to what he's prepared to do. Is he just going to throw Rasmus Kupari into the Scheifele spot? Is he going to move Morgan Barron? Morgan Barron, you got to remember, has also had played some center. So maybe Morgan Barron moves up, because we've been talking about Morgan Barron deserving a little more opportunity. So maybe he moves up to a center role. And again, 11-7, depending on if you go 11-7, if they go 12-6, we asked about Adam Lowry, because Adam Lowry, you remember, got the move up. And what happens? The Jets got 2 goals when he was up, moved up ahead. So, I mean, look, here's the reality. I think if it's one game, I don't think any line is so sacrosanct that you can't actually adjust them right now, right? Like, I would
imagine, Dave, that sorry to cut you off.
No, it's fine.
But Gabe, I would imagine, we have the comment. I'll post it here from Bob's videos. I would imagine if they're going to move a guy from wing to center, I would think it would be easier to move Vilardi, just in the sense that we know that Perfetti's dealing with an injury,
right?
So I do think that factors in a little bit, right? Like, it was a wrist, if I'm not mistaken, that Bowness mentioned, right? So face-offs, I mean,
yeah, he's not going to
if look, again, we're playing speculation station here, but if Scheifele isn't ready to go and AJF isn't ready, I mean, we know Kupari is going to be in the lineup. Rick Bowness said specifically, not verbatim, but he said that that Kupari is going to go in the lineup. So we know one of Axel Jonsson-Fjällby and Mark Scheifele isn't playing, right? So Kupari is a natural center. So obviously, Kupari, it makes sense. You plug him into the fourth line, and then Morgan Barron and Dominic Toninato. I mean, actually, that's not true. Kupari, I guess, could play on the wing with Toninato centering. But the point is, I think, Vilardi and Perfetti obviously were drafted as centers. My best guess, I think, I'll get your take on it, guys, but I would imagine that it would be maybe Vilardi moves to center.
I would think it would be Vilardi. Really seems to
between
be
the two. If it's like Vilardi or Perfetti moving to center, I would lean towards Vilardi.
I think the Perfetti option, that ship sailed by when they talked about his wrist injury yesterday.
Exactly.
So I think Vilardi, and then the question really becomes who moves up to play with Ehlers, assuming they keep that, the two of them there. Ehlers on the wing, who moves up to take that opportunity? I mean, it would not surprise me if it's a guy like Morgan Barron who jumps up, and gets that opportunity to sort of slide in there in an elevated role. That way you're maybe keeping you keep the third line together, with Lowry and Niederreiter and Appleton. You keep the second line together with Perfetti and Nemesnikov.
It's a good point by Aaron there, by the way, Drew, that this is the first time all three of the Kings have been together since Game 3.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe you move Barron up to play in that, give him an opportunity to play in an elevated role, having done really the yeoman's work on the fourth line for so long. See if there's, even if it's only a 1 night or a 2 night audition, I think that he probably earned that opportunity to move up and get some of that bigger playing time. And again, the Jets, the timing of this is never ideal. Let's assume that, Scheifele's out, but the timing of this isn't ideal, but you're really entering a bit of a soft spot in the schedule after tonight's game. You play Tuesday, so you got 2 days off, or and then you play Saturday, and then next week you only have 3 games. So really, there, as our buddy Mike McIntyre mentioned, after tonight the Jets have 5 games in something like a 20+ day stretch. So if you're going to get banged up, this is the time to really do it. If there's, they've been banged up.
And we should mention, Drew, that that's because of the All-Star break. Just for those people who don't know, obviously a lot of people know that.
All-Star break and bye week.
There you go. So that's why there's so few games. But I think it's going to be very interesting. And you just mentioned that you have 2 days off before the game against the Islanders, and then you have another 3 days off. I forget who they play next after that.
Well,
who do they play after the Islanders?
So Mitchell Clinton, Jets analyst on CJOB Power 97, the radio broadcast. It's an optional for the Jets this morning, so maybe we won't get that much more insight. But a very interesting perspective is that Kyle Connor is on the ice in a regular jersey.
Yeah, we had a feeling that was going to be happening soon.
Yeah. He's looked so
By
good.
the way, Drew is not saying that Connor is going to play. That's not what Drew's saying.
No. Connor will not be in the lineup tonight. That would be too soon. That would be a stunner. It would be a stunner to me if he was in the lineup tonight.
A number one stunner.
You're obviously close to where he's going to be in the lineup, barring any sort of setback. He's going to be in the lineup, if not Tuesday, then likely Saturday against Ottawa, probably, given that you're going to have some practice time this week, given that you're going to have some opportunity to get him into some battle drills and some contact and everything else, which means by my, I'm not a calendar whiz or a mathematician, but I believe that would put him ahead of schedule, if not mistaken, right, Dave?
Yeah, well, he took the injury was suffered on December 10th. So, you can do the math. We're at just over 4 weeks now.
Right.
And Rick Bowness didn't want to suggest that he was going to be coming back way ahead of schedule. And what the original prognosis was 4 to 6 weeks, was it not? So
I thought it was 6 to 8
or 6 to 8. Was it 6 to 8? Honestly, the problem is they throw it around like it's no big deal. 4 to 6, 6 to 8. Yeah. So regardless,
that next game, by the way, is that I was talking about after the Islanders game is
Ottawa.
Ottawa next Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. So it's but we could see it from his skating. His skating looked good yesterday. He and Mark Scheifele had a little 2-on-1 chance, and you're like, this guy probably won't be in it. And we've been talking about it, while watching practice. It didn't seem like he was going to be in a non-contact jersey for much longer. And he and Gustafson even were involved in some things that were pretty close to a contact yesterday during practice. So not a surprise that Kyle Connor has switched out of the non-contact to a regular jersey.
Well, there you go. So that's so far what we know from the morning skate for the Winnipeg Jets. So why don't we head to break? I can see that Dan Robertson is getting queued up to join us. So let's take our first commercial break. When we come back, the Jets play-by-play broadcaster on TSN3 joins us. And of course, we'll bring you the latest from what happens at morning skate ahead of this evening's Jets-Flyers game. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, our good friend Dan Robertson up next. You're live on our YouTube channel.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
This January at Boston Pizza, every day is Pasta Tuesday. That means BP's famous pastas start at just $11.99 every single day. Create your own or go gourmet for just a few bucks more. Come on in for Pasta Tuesday pricing any day. Only this January at Boston Pizza.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
9:30 in the morning, bottom of hour number one. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Saturday morning, later tonight, the Illegal Curve post-game show, following the Jets and the Flyers. I'm your host, Drew Mandel. Dave Manouk's in the right. Ezra Ginsburg's in the bottom middle for now, because we're pleased to welcome to the program from TSN 3. You know him as the Jets play-by-play broadcaster on the TSN broadcast. Our good friend Dan Robertson joins the program. Dan, good morning. Nice to see you. How are things?
Things are well. Thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure to have you on. Here's a quick update from morning skate. We mentioned Kyle Connor in a regular jersey. Nikolai Ehlers is on the ice. Rasmus Kupari is on the ice. And Axel Jonsson-Fjällby is also on the ice for the Jets ahead of this evening's game against the Flyers. So let me ask you this, Mr. Robertson. If Mark Scheifele is unable to go tonight, how do you foresee the Jets sort of rejigging the forward lines to account for that absence?
Well, I suppose Kupari would come back in and maybe people would bump up. They would just change the line combinations. I don't know if it would be as simple as Nemesnikov being sent to the first line and Lowry to the second. I don't think that would make much sense, really. I guess the other side of it is, and I skip morning skate too because we're not doing the game tonight. So any chance I get to skip morning skate, I always take it. So the thing is, I guess you don't want to have to rely on Kupari if he is going to play for too many minutes because he's been off for so long. So maybe he centers the fourth line and gets kind of spot duty and they scramble things up a little bit, but it doesn't seem to matter who's in or who's out the last little while. They all play the same when they don't have the puck, as Rick would say. They're looking great.
Dan, what's it been like for you as a play-by-play broadcaster to cover this first place team? Because I imagine your approach hasn't changed. But I think you would agree that last year, especially in the second half of the season, I mean, there were some pretty bad stretches, a lot of losses for the Jets. They were one of the worst teams in the league in the second half of the season. So what's it been like for you and Kevin, to call a team that's having so much success right now?
It's a lot of fun for us. We both realize, and we're the first to say, we don't work for the Jets, but you want to see them do well. I mean, we're around them. We travel on their plane and stay in their hotel and that sort of thing. So we're not part of the team, but we know the staff well, and you like to see the hard work rewarded. I mean, I've been around long enough to know what it's like to deal with some teams that are terrible. I mean, I did Canadians games for 8 years, and through eight years, a lot of teams will be up and they'll be down. And there was some really, games. There'd be games in November. With Sergio Momesso and I would do the games together. We'd look at each other and say, "This is over already. We've got, how many months? 4 or 5 months ahead of us of losing hockey." So, but it's good. It makes you, I don't know. It gives me anyway a little bit more energy, and Kev always has a lot of energy too. So it's a nice feeling to kind of. Like, I'll just give you an example. The other night, they're playing Chicago, obviously, and Chicago's run down and decimated. By the other side of the coin, the Jets have been really busy, and they were trying to find their energy. But you still sort of thought, okay, they're going to win this just because they found ways to pull it out. And I'm just thinking, God, I want a Jets goal to call, because I had the feeling that if and when they did score, the place was going to go nuts because it was filled. And I think you can feel too, not to get too far off track, but that there's a lot of energy building within the fan base. So then they score once, and then when the Oilers scored, it's like, all right, this is what we're here for. So that's a long worded way of saying it's a lot of fun when the team, whatever team you're following or calling for, is going well.
Dan, have you noticed a difference off the ice with this team? Because as you said, we're often at morning skate, where it seems like to me that the vibe is a little different this year, and winning will always make it a lot more fun. There was a lot more joy in Joyville, as former Jets coach Claude Noel used to say. But are you noticing, because as you said, you're on the plane, you're in the hotel, you see these guys even in a different capacity than we do when we're around them in the locker room. So are you noticing kind of a different vibe this year, obviously with the transition from captaincy and all the other changes that have taken place?
Yeah, well, I think the last thing you touched on is something a lot of us have talked about. And I was only here for the 1 year when Wheeler was captain, but I mean, you hear rumblings of it, just how things are a lot more relaxed now, and other people's opinions matter more. Not to say they didn't previously, but I think, like the other day we were in Arizona, and that was in Tempe, I should say. And that was a different circumstance too, because the fathers and the mentors, I guess, were on the trips, but you'd see the guys around the hotel a little bit, and the big smiles around the faces. So, I mean, I guess it would be a stretch for me to say I can feel a real tangible difference. I think maybe Kevin could speak to that more than I could, because he's been around longer. I can say it is a good feeling. Like when you go into the room after practice, after morning skate or whatever, there's a lot of chatter, and it's in a good way. And you guys, like Dave, sees that. If he's wearing shorts or not, he still sees whether or not there's a buzz. A little inside joke between Dave and I, but no, it's just there's a good feeling and a good buzz around the team, and when you're winning, that's going to be the case for sure.
Dan Robertson is our guest Saturday morning. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dan, of course, is the Jets broadcaster on the TSN 3 broadcast. Dan, there's an adage in sports, and I'm probably screwing it up, but bear with me, that bad teams don't have anyone driving them. Average teams are coach driven, and the best teams are player driven. From my perspective, especially with what you saw on Thursday night with Lowry and Morrissey really dragging this team through the muck and the fight. Just even though Rick Bonus's impact is so significant, it still seems like this is a player driven team. On top of that, it really is remarkable, how this team is all pulling in the same direction, pulling on the rope both on and off the ice in unanimity.
I agree with you, and I think Rick would say that too, that those guys, and every team is the same. Coaches can only say so much. It has to happen on the ice. But what you talked about with Morrissey and Lowry the other night, I kind of felt through the game that if they were going to win it, it was going to be because something Morrissey did. And I guess in the end, I mean, it wasn't technically, but he was just, you could tell he was still keeping that high standard that he's set for a long time. So that's it. I mean, I've asked, when we're on the road, I host the games as well. So we had a pregame. That meant that I was going to interview, I guess it was Scott or Neil. And it was either him or Rick. But the question was about that. Do you feel like, obviously, you guys as coaches are still directing them and they need coaching, but how much of it is coming from within the room? And the answer was a lot. And that's what you want, right? You don't want to have to crack the whip all the time, and you can't crack the whip all the time because you'll get tuned out. But when it's coming from within that dressing room, regardless who the team is, that's what you need, because then it can come from different voices. Or on the ice, different guys are going to step up at different times. And to me, that's what this team is about. I think we showed a full page graphic the other night about the different number of game-winning goals, or where they've come from, and just and that's just offense, but how it's spread across the board. That's part of what these Jets are about too. So I think, not to get corny, but everybody, I believe, feels they have a hand in this team in a big way. And I think we're seeing that. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I really get that feeling.
No, I don't think any of us are going to disagree with that, Dan. I think this might be maybe the tightest knit group we've seen in the 13 years we've been covering them. It's definitely a lot tighter than the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years. That's for sure. And obviously, as you mentioned, winning helps. You mentioned Rick Bowness in your answer there, and it was announced, I believe it was announced yesterday, it might have been announced a couple days ago, that Rick's going to be going to the All-Star game, and he did mention that he will be attending. And I wanted to ask you, I mean, first off, I mean, you know how beloved Rick Bowness is. There's not one person, at least that I've come across, that said anything bad about him. And, you know, especially with, you know, the health of his wife, Judy, and he had to leave the team a little bit. You mentioned Scott Arniel. He had to take over, and he did an admirable job. I think you'd agree, as the head coach. The Jets didn't really, miss a beat when Arniel was behind the bench. But just how nice is it for Rick Bowness? I know he was downplaying it a little bit, and he was saying that, you know, that's, you know, a team recognition, and he wouldn't really, and he's not a guy that's, you know, he's a humble guy, you know that. But just how nice was that for him, you know, to get that recognition and go to his first All-Star game, which is surprising considering how long he's been in the league.
Yeah, he's going to be 69 years old this month. And when you say how long he's been in the league, I kind of grew up a Pittsburgh Penguins fan. And, well, I say grew up in the mid-'80s when Lemieux came into the league. I kind of latched onto him. So you fast forward to, I guess it was the spring of 91, and they were down 2-0 to the Bruins in the semifinal. They go back and sweep them. And Rick was the head coach of the Boston Bruins. I was 22 years old. So that gives you, not 22 anymore, that gives you an idea of how long he's been around. And when you bring that up to him, he kind of laughs. But not just the fact, I'll say, you know, I'll start a question by saying, you've been around a long time. They'll say, yeah, thanks for reminding me. But it's a feather in his cap, right? It's something well-deserved too, because if you look at it, you go back to last year, and I don't want to say we forget this, but I want to remind people, when he started, almost immediately he got COVID, and that hung on to him for a long time. Remember, he was doing some of the press availabilities, and he kind of had to stop. So he didn't make much of it, but it bothered him, obviously. And then things with Judy this year. So there were times when I thought, is he just going to say to hell with this? Like, I've coached forever. I don't need this. I'm going to step down and let Arnie take over. But as soon as Judy was ready to go, he's right back in there. So that speaks to his desire to win. We all know he got to the final a few years ago with Dallas, and his perseverance. So I'm glad. I mean, some people, whether, you know, I'm sure there's players, and that's probably a different thing, who get elected to go to the All-Star game, get chosen to go every year, and they're like, yeah, whatever. But this is great for him. And I hope people I hope there's a lot of stories written about it when he goes. I hope there's a lot made of it, because he deserves it. I mean, he came in and he made changes right away, right? He took the captaincy away from Wheeler, and he talked about culture change. Well, look, we all talk culture. It's changed, right? I don't know how you qualify that, or how you actually measure that, but it has, and that's him. Right, it's others too, but that's driven by him. So he deserves this.
You know, Dan, as you said, you haven't been in Winnipeg long, but it feels like you've been here for quite some time. So now that you have been in Winnipeg, is there anything that's, you know, whether it's calling games or just being as part of the community that you've taken note of?
Well, I don't want this to sound the wrong way or egotistical, because it's not, but a lot of people will come up and say nice things. And so what reminds me is what the team means to the community, and I say community, I don't mean just Winnipeg, obviously. Like we were in Arizona the other day, and in Tempe at Mullet Arena, we're basically on the concourse. Well, we are. There's a little ride built for us because it's so small, but so many people came by and they want to talk Jets hockey, and it's, you know, I can't take 2 steps outside the door without people wanting to talk about the Jets. And it's, I mean, I knew it would be that way because it's the smallest market, and I know what kind of viewership this market has always given TSN3 because it means so much to the community. So even though I knew that was the case, to see it and to hear it, it's really cool. Like, and it's what happens is it more like 95% of the time, if somebody comes to talk, they don't say, "Hey, are you Dan? My name is." It's just like, "So, what do you think of Vlad Domestikov? He's really," I'm like they're right into it, right? Like we know each other, and it's great. So I love that. So that's why I'm hoping that this can continue. I mean, who knows, right? I suppose this time last year we were all saying the same thing. Just a reminder that things can go south. But I get a different feeling from last year, and just to go back to Thursday. And I know that building was probably sold out because people thought Bedard was going to play. But I hope that building keeps being sold out because there's an energy in there. And I've said this before, long before Dennis was going to move on. Like when I would come out here to call Canadians games, I couldn't wait because it's a smaller building. And one thing that I love is like there'll be little sort of subtle plays that are made on the ice where fans will applaud, and I'm like, yeah, these, like, people know what they're looking at here. So it's just kind of great to be part of a hockey community, just sort of involved in hockey in a province and in a city where they love the team so much.
And Dan, I'm sorry, just wanted to say one thing. I'm not sure how big of a bagel guy you are. You probably won't be surprised that I'm a big bagel guy, but I don't know if you're aware that we do have a bagel place in Winnipeg that makes and serves Montreal-style bagels. It's called Bagel Smith, and it's located on Taylor Avenue. So I'm just throwing that out there. We do have Montreal. You spent 8 years covering the Habs in Montreal, so we have Montreal-style bagels in Winnipeg. I just wanted to throw that out there. Maybe I'll pick some up and deliver some to you at the game one of these days.
I'll be there 15 minutes after we're off the air. Yeah. That's great. That's good to know.
Yeah, there's also a location on Carlton for the record. If you don't want to go all the way to Taylor Avenue, there's one
very
on Carlton
close to the arena. Yes,
I live on Carlton. I live in True North Square. So
okay, then just walk down the street.
Check out Bagel Smith, Dan. You won't be disappointed.
Okay, that's great.
So Dan Robertson, our guest Saturday morning. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You know, Dan, on Thursday, of course, that's when Kevin, I think it was Thursday, at least the days are blending together. Kevin Scheifele addressed the media, sort of his mid-season address, talking about the state of the team. And again, you could sense the pride that was emanating from him over the success of this team. But as you know, so January 13th, tops in the NHL. Everything is going well for the Jets, but that doesn't mean that, you know, the status quo is what it's going to be moving forward. What could you foresee the Jets looking to do, you know, come trade deadline between now and say the deadline, which is about, 6 weeks away, 7 weeks away? Not that there's a overwhelming priority, but what do you see the Jets maybe exploring as an option?
I think they need to get a little more significant down the middle. And when I say this, it's with all the respect of Vlad Domestikov. He's been very, very good. Mm-hmm. But if you look at a playoff matchup, I think you would. There we go. Hang on. Sort of. It's a very tenuous setup here. I think what you would look at is, okay, the opposing team would come in and they would pay a lot of attention on Mark Scheifele. Mm-hmm. So who's going to drive the offense at center after that? If they could, and Chevy's conservative and he's a terrific GM. I think he's the GM of the league right now. I say he's mostly conservative. We've seen him go and get Stastny or Hayes in the past. I just think that would slot Vlad maybe down to the fourth line. You could leave that Lowry line intact. And if you could get a significant second line centerman, then you're talking. Because I just think after the All-Star break, and everybody will say this, people who've played, people who coach, the level goes up like this, it gets that much tougher to play. And I think, I don't know what the price is. I was talking with somebody the other day, and I'm not trying to start anything. It's just a buddy who's in the media. I said, what do they need? He said, Elias Lindholm, swing for the fences. I'm like, yeah, that would be pretty good. But, that's the thing.
Let me just interrupt you for a second. Last week on this show, Jeff Hamilton, who's our good friend from the Winnipeg Free Press, threw out the name Crosby. So as long as you're below Crosby, you're not going to be causing any sort of problems.
Well, I'll use my Nova Scotian roots and give Sid a call. No, I don't have his phone number. But I suppose Rick could use his Nova Scotian roots. But no, I think at center maybe, and maybe a little bit more a big guy on defense somewhere. But, the defense has played so well. I think what's going to happen, though, there's going to be injuries, right? We had our great graphics guy, John Matheson, sent us something the other day saying that the Jets, their top six, they've had more games played out of their top six than that started the season than any other team, just to say how healthy they've been. But we all know that if you're going to make a long run in the playoffs, you need bodies, you need quality. But to me, I'm gonna stick with that number 2 center spot, which would cost a lot.
That's surprising to hear because it's not like they haven't been without Connor and Velarde for weeks at a time there.
Yeah, just the defensive, the top 6D, not the forwards.
The top 6D. Sorry, I thought you meant the top 6 forwards. My bad. Yeah,
No.
You're right. The defense, by and large, has been healthy without, with the exception, of course, of Ville Heinola, who was, on his way back. So maybe there's the internal, if there is a need for internal assets coming from the back end, as Heinola's down with the Moose, getting his games in there to maybe he's the guy who could potentially come up if the Jets explore that avenue. I'm not causing any trouble here or anything.
Yeah, and you feel for Logan Stanley or Declan Chisholm, they just can't get in, right? But that's the way it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Dan, you just mentioned your Nova Scotian roots, which leads nicely into my question about Morgan Barron. And before I ask about Morgan Barron, I have to give Dave M credit because, he's been flying the Morgan Barron flag since he was playing for the Moose, because as you know, Dave M covers all the Moose games for Illegal Curve. And, he's already tied his career high in goals with 8. He's playing on the fourth line. He's playing about 11 or 12 minutes a game. He obviously, kills penalties. What has stood out to you about Morgan Barron? Because to me, he, is kind of one of those unsung heroes. I mean, we've talked a lot about the forward depth. They've got contributions from all 4 forward lines, but Morgan Barron seems like a guy that you could really put him on any line and you know what you're going to get from him, which is he's just a good all-around hockey player, offensively and defensively.
He is, and I should say to Dave, here's my Friday night. I was listening to the Moose Laval Rocket game on TSN 690 radio last night. So there's my Friday night. But no, Morgan, he's playing his game, I think, is what we're seeing. So, and what that game is using his body. I mean, he's 6'4", 220, I think he's listed at, and he's driving the net, dropping the shoulder. He's found the niche, and like this guy, when he gets ahead of steam, when he gets his legs pumping through neutral ice, he can be, difficult to take the puck from. So he's got an outside chance at 20 goals. So, it might not happen, but if you think about that, with his limited minutes that you talked about, even if it's 15, right? And I know we like to, equate numbers with levels of performance. Sometimes it's accurate, sometimes it isn't. But if he can do that and continue to play sort of sound defensive hockey, then that's great. That looks good for his future. I know we looked at some numbers the other day, and I'm not an analytics guy at all. I should be, but it was basically the Jets' fourth line against other fourth lines in the league, and how well they've done possession-wise, and it's really been impressive. But I like it. I like the fact that he's not trying to be someone he's not. He drives the net. He lugs bodies with him. Like you said, he's a good penalty killer. And that was the Cop trade, right? I mean, you'd think about things that Shea's done. Like, that was a good trade. And so just remind me, they got a draft pick, and I can't remember who they flipped that into.
I think it was wasn't it
Salamonson?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you look at those sort of things, and sometimes it takes a while to see what trades do for you in the long run. Well, with respect to Andrew Kopp, who's a good player, that was a hell of a trade. So, and I like seeing Morgan do well. It was neat. His folks came up and we started chatting. They grew up 45 minutes from where I'm from. And that was the week. So it would have been December the 18th. The Canadians were here and Justin scored, I think, right, to win the game in overtime. Yeah. And I said, I know that's not your first time seeing those two together, but like, what's that like? And his mother was just like smiling and didn't really know what to say. So that's a cool story, but I really like his game. I don't know what the offensive ceiling is. I don't think it matters. He's got a role and he knows how to play it.
Dan, when we're talking about numbers, we're looking at some of the historic numbers that this Jets club has put up. And which one is the most impressive to you? When you look at it, is it 31 games without giving up more than 3 goals? And the modern record is 35 by the 14-15 Minnesota Wild. Is it the 8 straight wins? Is it the 14 game point streak? I mean, there's so many things that this team has done. I think Drew is on the 11 straight games with 2 goals or less streak as well. So this team has done so many things that have been remarkable since that loss against the San Jose Sharks. What to you really stands out?
Well, it's hard to go against that, the one you just cited with the 2 goals or less. But if I go to the 31 games, I mean, you would think there'd be just a no-show in there somewhere where they gave up 4 or 5 goals, but it's just not happened. So just doing my research the other day, it was their goals against in their last 31 is 1.9. That's hard to do. I know they've got tremendous goaltending, but to me that's we talked about things being driven from the players, and I asked Rick this when that streak was going. It was maybe 27 games in. He said, "Well, I don't know if the guys know about that streak or if they care, but the point is that they've set a standard." Especially, not especially defensively, but certainly defensively, when they don't have the puck, they'll all play the same way. And I think that's what we're seeing. And they've done it without, stellar penalty killing. It's been better the last little while, and they've not allowed many power plays. But to me, that's part of it too. Like Kevin Sawyer has said this, and he's right, that they've done all this without great special teams. So you would think at some point, either the power play or the penalty killer, both are going to come to life. I think it really only matters when the playoffs start. But to me, the 31 games with the 3 or less, and it all started November the 4th in Arizona. So when we were there the other day, we kind of recapped what they've done in that time, because it's like what Chevy said and the players said, they haven't won anything yet, and it's true. But I think you have to sort of celebrate these little things along the way and appreciate what they've been able to do this season.
No, absolutely. The season is such a grind at 82 games that if you don't celebrate the sort of the small victories or the small milestones, then it just becomes far too much of a slog. And I want to just highlight an interesting comment from Eric Dehachik of The Athletic. And we all know and love Eric and respect him for his years of covering the NHL.
A Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he is a Hall of Famer. He points out that the 14-15 Minnesota Wild, the record that the Jets are chasing, that season was an absolute doldrums in terms of offensive output in the league. That's the year that Jamie Benn led the entire NHL in points with 87. I mean, 87 points. I'm pretty sure McDavid already has that this year, or Kucherov is getting close to that. But it just goes to show you that what the Jets are doing in 23-24, where scoring is far more elevated than it was in 14-15. So if you're going to compare eras, even though they're only a decade apart, some context matters in that instance, Dan.
Yeah, and I'm going to steal that from you for Tuesday's game against the Islanders, just to show the goals per game across the league. I wouldn't have thought that, but
Dan, give Dave credit, though.
No, give Eric credit.
I'm not giving anybody credit. I'm taking it as my own. I will actually, but give Eric credit. That's a good point. That was my second year broadcasting, and I remember thinking, like, we were in Dallas near the end of the year, and I thought, so Ben had like 84 points, and I thought he's going to win the scoring race with fewer than 90 points. So I know that's not a topic we're on, but God, hockey is so much more fun now than it was 9-10 years ago.
Didn't Josh Morrissey have 84 points last year?
76.
Yeah.
Pretty
close. Basically.
Yeah. You talk about Morrissey, and there's I don't think that there's a time where he's going to get the credit that he fully deserves, whether it's a function of being here in Winnipeg or never putting up the points that, say, Quinn Hughes or Adam Fox are putting up in or Cale Makar, of course, the benchmark, the gold standard, as far as I'm concerned, among defensemen right now. But just what Josh Morrissey's been able to do on both ends of the ice probably does deserve more credit and recognition beyond just those teams or those individuals who watch the Jets on a regular basis.
I would say, and I would ask the three of you this. I was thinking the other night, so I didn't expect that he would put up points at the clip that he did last year. Not that he's a lesser player. It's just that was a special season. And but when I watch him, I don't like there's not been any step back at all. And I think he's even better defensively. I don't know, maybe let's just, you watch games and you sort of think, wow, does this guy, and I want to sit and talk with him when the confidence came to, like, he'll make reads and he'll act on them, whether it's to pinch, he'll rush down to the hash marks in the offensive zone, or he'll make, how many times when he has the puck at the left point and he'll do the head fake and cut to his right, how many times does anybody strip the puck away from him? Like, he's just supremely confident, and as physically gifted as he is, he's a wonderful skater. He's got that blast of a shot that we saw the other night. To me, his intelligence is maybe the most impressive thing. And it's just neat when you see, and again, I wasn't here to start, but everybody tells me he concentrated so much on defense when he got into the league and was very good at it. But then something turned a long way where and maybe we give bonus credit for this too, right? Last year, he was really on him to say, we need more from you. There's more there. So that, yeah, the guy, he's brilliant. It's just, when does he have a bad game? I don't know. It's not saying he's perfect, but the consistency is pretty remarkable for me.
Dan Robertson is the Jets broadcaster on the TSN 3 games. Lucky to have you in town for the second year, Dan. I got to ask you, after Tuesday, you got like a 2.5 week break without
19
calling
days.
any games. What are you going to do?
19 days, the number. I've had that number written on my wall for since October the 4th. What am I going to do? I'm going to head back east and just kind of take some time to relax. I've been sick the last week and a half and trying to get through the broadcast. So hopefully, I'll get better here in the next few days. But it'll be nice to have some time to get ready for the Islanders broadcast. But it's a funny feeling. Even tonight, like, I'll watch the game and it's nice. We do 60 games this year out of 82, and it's nice to have the breaks, but there's also a feeling of jealousy, or like, I wish I was calling that game, or I should be there now, so I'm not going to complain. It's great to have the time off. And even then, when we come back, there's a time in February where we have like 8 days off, just because of the Sportsnet broadcast, where they have exclusive rights to Saturdays, Mondays, and Wednesdays. And that's what's happened here. We have a run of those, and then the player break, and so on. So it'll just be a matter of paying as close attention as I can to when they're playing, but at the same time, when they're not playing, and just try to forget about things. And I've been a little bit run down, as I said, so I'll try to get my sleep back on track and try to feel a little bit better.
So, Dan, does Kevin come with you to Nova Scotia, or is Kevin going to like Mexico or Costa Rica or something?
Have you seen the movie Brothers? Where we have the bunk beds lined up and I'm on the top, which is hazardous because I'm the big body and I might go crashing through in the middle of the night. No, you know what? I think he's probably headed to the other side of the country. Kev's a BC boy, and I know he's got some work to do, and he's works his guts out when he's there with his properties and that sort of thing. So yeah, but you know what? It's fun. We're good friends, and we'll text back and forth. Well, that's happened too, where we're not doing games, and we're with our producer Kevin Pratt too. We're kind of texting all in a triangle about what's going on. So he'll get some R&R as well.
There you go. Dan Robertson, well-earned R&R after Tuesday night. You still got to power through Tuesday night between the Jets and the Isles, but we look forward to watching the broadcast as always, and we appreciate your time and insight this morning. I hope you're well, be well, and keep well. Thanks so much for joining us this morning, Dan.
Oh, a lot of fun. My pleasure. Thank you.
Take care. There he goes.
Cheers,
Dan Robertson, Jets broadcaster, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. When we come back, more on the Jets and the Flyers ahead of tonight's game in downtown Winnipeg. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
This January at Boston Pizza, every day is Pasta Tuesday. That means BP's famous pastas start at just $11.99 every single day. Create your own or go gourmet for just a few bucks more. Come on in for Pasta Tuesday pricing any day. Only this January at Boston Pizza.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake. After a great game or great deal, it shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Big thanks to Dan Robertson, TSN Jets broadcaster, for joining us for that really insightful interview. We don't often get a chance to speak with Dan, given the busy schedules that we all have and his work related to the Winnipeg Jets. So it was great to catch up with him this morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Quick update again from morning skate. No Mark Scheifele. So that's not a surprise. Have not heard any official word from Rick Bowness. He has not yet spoken regarding Scheifele's status for tonight, but he was not on the ice. It wasn't optional, so that doesn't necessarily mean
no surprise there.
Right. But Ehlers was out there, Axel Jonsson-Fjällby was out there, Rasmus Kupari was out there, and if you're just joining us and you may have missed this, Kyle Connor was out there in a regular jersey. So taking contact, the only player in yellow was David Gustafsson as he continues to battle something. I'm not even sure if we know what his ailment is.
Lower body, I think.
Lower body, upper body, mid body.
But suffered against I think it was that Bruins
that tells
game.
us a lot, Dave.
Was it December 22nd against the Bruins? So that's the last time we've seen David Gustafsson, who was, remember, the day-to-day.
The Gus bus has been parked.
It has been parked at least temporarily. I guess it's going on about 3 weeks or so now. So obviously the Jets would like to get him back and healthy and get the whole lineup back up and healthy. And as soon as we have any more from the Winnipeg Jets morning skate, the Flyers aren't skating today because they played last night in St. Paul. So it's the second half of a back-to-back for them. But as soon as we have any more from the Winnipeg Jets land, we will bring it to you here on illegalcurve.com.
Did you see who was scratched last night in Philly?
Bobby Brink. Is that who you're going to say?
And he's from Minnesota.
I know. Well, Tort's going to torts, and we'll talk to Anthony Sanfilipo, who was on the receiving end of Tort's going to torts earlier this week, related to the Cutter Gauthier reporting and everything along those lines. And so we'll talk to Anthony Sanfilipo about the Jets' opponent, the Philadelphia Flyers, coming up in about 25 minutes time. Kevin Cheveldayoff, and I mentioned it in the interview with Dan, he spoke to the media earlier this week, his sort of mid-season address. He did this one. It's interesting. I mean, again, I love looking at sort of between the lines and reading things between the lines. Last year, the mid-season address happened when the team was on the road in Buffalo. This year, as the team is going well, it happens at home with all the media here in Winnipeg. And I mean, I know that I shouldn't look into things like that, but I can't help myself. In any event, Dave, you were there at the Matt Frost Media Center. You know, Kevin Cheveldayoff, at best is circumspect regarding sort of the plans and his thinking and his strategy, but you could definitely feel the pride that he was demonstrating and the pride that he was showing for how the team has been playing so far, with the caveat that he did say, look, we haven't accomplished our goal or anything yet, been a nice 41 games, but it doesn't really ultimately mean anything because the next 41 in the playoffs are going to be what really matters.
At that point, it was 40 games, Drew. But you're right. I mean, I'm kidding. But look, there's no question he was beaming from all the way from Blaine Lake, Saskatchewan, population 500. To his time in Brandon, and then of course being here in Winnipeg representing folks on the prairies. And Judy Owen of the Canadian Press asked him about that pride he feels, because as you said, Drew, he's his usual self where he's not giving you too much information. And again, Rick Bowness has been saying this, and it's not surprising that Kevin Scheifele is repeating it. They haven't accomplished anything, they haven't won anything, and they've been here before last year. And while we would all agree that this is a much different team than it was last year, they know the peril of getting too far ahead of their skis. And so they don't want to do that. They don't want to have to take a tumble. And so they're measured. And, he was asked questions about, making additions to the team, changing the chemistry, what sort of thing that would look like. And of course, not surprisingly, he said that they're having their pro and amateur meetings, and they'll be, those, I think that's happening either next week or the week after. But ultimately, like I said, there was definitely like some pride in this group, pride in his sticking to his plan, right? Because remember, I mean, there are a lot of folks who said, not Ezzy and Dave, just for the record, but there were a lot of folks who felt that this team was needing to be blown up and needing to be the whole process kind of restarted. And Kevin Scheifele, to his credit, stuck to his guns and made the moves that were necessary, trim the fat, if you will. Like, they bought out Blake Wheeler. They traded Pierre-Luc Dubois. They brought in guys who, as Rick Bowness would say, want to be here and want to be Winnipeg Jets. And ultimately, they've been rewarded. Again, look at the seasons that, I guess the only notable thing that we really learned was that he had some sort of conversations with Brendan Dillon and Dylan DeMello, who are both UFAs at the end of the season. But the funny part about that is
Chevy loves conversations.
He does love a good conversation, but it's amazing to me because I'm in that press conference. I'm listening to his words live, recording them for our YouTube channel, and of course, illegalcurve.com. And it's amazing the headlines that I read after the fact. It's like, Kevin Scheifele has opened negotiations with, it's like, no, he said he had a conversation. He didn't say he was opening negotiations. That was on TSN. And I was like, boy, that's someone who got their headline completely wrong. But ultimately, he talked about DeMello and Dylan and having, chats with their agents. And then Elliot Friedman on 32 Thoughts made a comment about how the Jets would like to keep Dylan DeMello. So they're, Brendan Dillon's 33, Dylan DeMello is 30. But ultimately, it was a very typical kind of mid-season address with Kevin Scheifele. We never really got anything of uber significance, I would say, other than,
did anyone
like I
ask
said,
about Cole Perfetti?
Well, just in terms of him being at the center, you mean?
No, in terms of Perfetti being an RFA. Obviously, I mean, I don't think anybody expects him to be signed, but that's going to be an interesting one, guys, because, I mean, obviously there could be a bridge deal there, but is Perfetti not a guy you consider locking up long-term?
Well, I was going to say, is just quickly, the only thing that really was mentioned is that with respect to Perfetti was more just
his
Kevin Scheifele was what?
His development?
Well, no. He was meant, like I think Murat had mentioned.
Hang on. Let me just interrupt. Rick Bowness does confirm Mark Scheifele will not play tonight for the Winnipeg Jets.
You were right, Drew. Dave and I were right.
Surprised. Well, I was right too. I said the same thing as well. Stop patting yourself on the back.
I don't know if you put it on the record. We put it on the record.
I'm going to mute you. So no Mark Scheifele tonight for the Winnipeg Jets. There are a couple of game time decisions. So the Jets may go 11-7 against Philadelphia, which is what we said in hour number one. Not a surprise necessarily.
So I would think it's going to be Stanley, not Chisholm.
Well, Stanley was the one who took the warm-up on Thursday against the Blackhawks. And I would assume the other game time decisions are I don't want to speculate as to who they are going to be. So it's not worth talking about. But no Mark Scheifele tonight.
Actually, Anthony it would be a reasonable one based on
course
him being
he took the morning. He was on the ice in the optional. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no Scheifele for the Jets tonight. Not a surprise given how he left. It wouldn't surprise me if they gave him Tuesday night off as well, but we don't need to get ahead of ourselves. That gives him almost a full 9 days of recovery since the injury happened on Thursday night.
You're not a doctor, but you'll take a look.
Well, you know that. But the Jets don't play after Tuesday until next Saturday afternoon against Ottawa. So
it
sorry
does make
for interrupting you there.
No, it's okay. It does make a lot of sense to give Scheifele the next 2 games off and let him, like you said, don't play till Saturday against Ottawa. That's a lot of it makes sense, especially given the way this season has gone and you've built up a lot of points. And again, you're not handing anything off by not having him in the lineup because you have to have that next man mentality. Anyways, getting back to Perfetti, with respect to what Kevin Sheldayoff said regarding Perfetti was he talked about the performance bonuses that he's going to achieve this year and how that would impact the salary cap. So that was kind of more just, he said, like the salary cap, you have to factor in that, there are guys who have performance bonuses. I believe it's only Perfetti this year, actually, but maybe I'm wrong. But I think it's only maybe Sandberg too. But I think it's
a legal curve gives you a performance bonus as well, Dave.
I appreciate that. But ultimately, you've got he just was talking in that regard how it would impact the salary cap this season for the Jets and at the trade deadline. So
the way performance bonuses work, let me just for people who don't know. So the maximum performance bonus that Cole Perfetti can earn this year is $850,000.
There you go.
That gets applied to next year's salary cap. So it's not something that would apply to this year's cap. It's charge on next year's cap. So that's why the Jets sort of have to factor that in, that Cole Perfetti is obviously going to get a significant raise from the just under $900,000 he's making this year on his entry-level contract to whatever the raise is going to be, plus potentially another $850,000. So that's what,
I think it's going to be interesting, guys, and we're going to be talking about this probably more in the off season. Whether Perfetti signs a bridge deal, like a 2-year deal, but I just think you have to think that there's a good chance that it's going to be a long-term deal, Dave, because Cole Perfetti's 22 years old and he's having a career year. The sky's the limit for this guy. And so I just wanted to throw that out there that, I don't think any Jets fans or any hockey observers will be surprised if the Jets lock up Perfetti long-term.
Well, he's on pace for about just under a 60-point season.
Right.
So you're right. If he's, if you're in his really second full year as an NHLer, and he had injury concerns last year, but if you're putting up 60 points at this age, this early in your career, you're right. Your development curve is pointed upwards. And
Perfetti's ceiling could honestly be 80 to 90 points. And I'm not exaggerating or being sarcastic. I do think he's that skilled that he has an 80 to 90 point season in him. Again, he's only 22 years old.
Yeah.
Drew hasn't been 22 years old for 50 years.
And nobody's giving me any sort of significant signing bonuses or anything along those lines. But you're right. So that's, that is the Cole Perfetti question is one more for the offseason, certainly. But going back to sort of Chevy's comments, and you mentioned, he's had introductory conversations with DeMello and with Brendan Dillon. And again, those are things that are likely not what I would describe as pressing. I wouldn't expect, anything to get done on that front necessarily before the end of the season, but stranger things have happened. Maybe like Niederreiter, they say they want to make a commitment and get that done. That's fine, but obviously I think the trade deadline is probably more of a pressing area of concern, or more of the focus for the Jets front office team at this point, with the scouting meetings coming up and everything else along those lines. You mentioned Elliot Friedman, Dave, on 32 Thoughts with Jeff Merrick, the podcast edition. They mentioned Matthew Joseph out of Ottawa as a player that the Jets might have their eye on, and he's a winger, and he's about 26 years old, I think. He's been with the Senators for the last couple of years, was with Tampa Bay before then. I think he won a cup with the Lightning, if I'm not mistaken. As you can fill me in on that one if I'm right on that. And apparently, again, Ottawa, he
has a cup ring.
Ottawa's been such a mess that they're looking to maybe change things around there. And Joseph would be a depth winger, but somebody the Jets, apparently, according to Merrick and Friedman, have at least have a half an eye on at the very
least. I don't know what would you be giving up for, like, I don't really, I'm asking because I don't really know, like, are you giving up a prospect? Are you giving up, like, obviously I don't think you're giving up a high draft pick. It's not like a first round or anything, but
no,
like, are you giving up I don't know, like it's curious. Like, that's what I would be curious about, what the Jets would have to give up to get Joseph.
And I don't have the answer to that. I mean,
I don't either.
think
That's why I'm throwing it out there.
Yeah, I mean, again, if Ottawa's, I mean, this is a guy who's got
Like
2
a
years
third round
left
pick,
on,
maybe.
Yeah, I'm thinking a second or a third at that point in time. I mean, again, given where the Jets are as of late, now granted, it does depend on where they finish the season. You'd be talking about a mid to late second rounder.
Sure.
You know, for a guy with term. So it's important he's not a rental. He has
How many
2
years does he have left, Drew?
2 years left on his deal after this one.
At how
What does
much?
he make?
At just under 3, so 2.95 million.
Yep, that's fine.
So I mean, again, it's not a huge price
Well,
tag.
I mean, it's not a huge price tag, but remember, you know, Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck are eating up that jump in cap space. So when their contracts go up next year,
The only thing I'll say, Dave, is that I don't know if, like, I mean, Drew asked Dan Robertson, like, I feel like look, the Jets have a good enough team, I think, to go all the way. I really do think that the way they're playing this year, they have a good enough team. I think as Sam Mindell returns, how's it going, Sam?
Keep going.
I think, 2C is what I'd be looking at, and a depth defenseman. Like, I don't know, Dave, with how well Dominic Toninato and Axel Jonsson-Fjällby have played on the fourth line, and then you've got David Gustafsson coming back, right?
Okay.
So I just don't know if the Jets need, like, does Matthew Joseph, like, is that a significant improvement in what the Jets have in the bottom six, is all I'm saying.
Right.
I just don't, I think the Jets bottom six has been great this year. The third and fourth lines have been great. Look, it could maybe Mason Appleton bump down to the fourth line and Morgan Barron goes up to the third line, or maybe Alex Iafallo gets bumped down to the third line, right? I'm just saying, Matthew Joseph, to me, I don't know if he moves the needle that much for the Jets.
Well, the question is, why do you need a winger? Why on a team?
Well, that's what I'm saying, right?
With plenty, I agree with you. I'm just reiterating the point, because I just don't know that a wing is why we're even having this conversation. And just to be clear, Drew, I don't know that Friedman gave the indication that the Jets were looking at Joseph, other than I think he was seeing a team that, Ottawa, like, thinking that maybe Ottawa has a need to move him out potentially, and maybe seeing that he's a player who could go to Winnipeg. But
like, I'm on the Sean Monahan bandwagon, and I was on the Sean Monahan bandwagon last year. He's having a real good season. Like, to me, he would be a nice second line center for the Jets.
I think Sean Monahan is the guy that a lot of people are sort of looking at. Now, he's a pure rental, of course, unless you re-sign him. Yeah. But he's a guy that, he's defensively responsible. I'm sure that getting out of Montreal, he can win faceoffs. Getting out of Montreal would probably rejuvenate him a little bit. Although, remember, he's been pretty good in Montreal. When he got, the Flames basically, it was a bit of a salary dump that the Flames did to get him off their books and go to Montreal. And he sort of found himself again in Montreal. But any of these players who are going from teams that have no hope of the playoffs to a team like the Jets, or a team of the Jets ilk, they get just an energy boost going from a season of doldrums to a season of potential. And so I think Sean Monahan,
face-off guy. You probably only have to give up, what, Dave, a second-round pick maybe? I mean, you got Nino Niederreiter with an extra year in his contract last year for a second-round pick. I don't think you necessarily have to give up a first-round pick. And then the other part of this, guys, is like, you could make a strong argument to the Jets at this point really need to make any trades, with Ville Heinola going to be back soon with the Jets, and Kyle Connor coming back soon, and David Gustafsson coming back. Like, I think you can make a strong argument. Jets are first overall in the league right now without Kyle Connor, without Ville Heinola.
Yeah,
I think there's a strong argument to be made that the Jets really don't have to do a ton at the trade deadline. Again, I'm not saying that that's what they're going to do. I'm just saying that, like, do you want to mess with a good thing at this point? And by the way, there's a lot of time before the trade deadline. So, I mean, a lot can change in the next, 7 weeks away, right?
Yeah, 7 weeks.
Just to jump off Ezzy's point, I think that it's a fine line, right? You have the chemistry of the team that has brought you here. These are the horses. These are the horses that you've ridden for since September, right? And we're January now. So that's a number of months. These are the guys who have gotten you there. And are you going to upset the apple cart by making too significant a change? Now, Drew, you're, I know, on board, and you've often advocated that you don't wait until the trade deadline. You get those moves now so you can get the guys into the lineup,
right?
Get them acclimatized to the culture and be part of the system, so you don't have that sprint from the trade deadline to the end of the season.
But theoretically, they help you for more games that way.
Of course. But again, it's also just that idea that you're now building chemistry with those guys.
Right.
To me, it's about depth. And it's about depth that you have to factor in injuries, right? And so look, the Jets have gone through injuries right now, and it's great. And I agree with Ezzy. Could this team, as it's constructed, when 100% healthy, challenge for a Stanley Cup? They clearly can. They're the number one team in the NHL. So they obviously have the ability to do that. But the question becomes, as the Jets have experienced, right? I mean, think about it. We don't have to go that far back in playoffs, against last year against Vegas. Don't have Ehlers. Lose Mark Scheifele. Josh Morrissey, I think, got hurt, right? Like you deal with injuries to major guys. And if you don't have something that can be replacing that in some capacity, then it's a problem. So look, it is a question of, do you want to swing for the fences and go for a Lindholm out of Calgary? I mean, I don't think they're going to do it. And I think there's too many other teams like Boston and Colorado. I think the price tag is going to be significant to get someone like that to be your 2C. But that would be quite the upgrade. And then, as you said, Drew, you could very easily move Vlad Namestnikov down to 4, and you've got quite a depth from Scheifele, Lindholm, Lowry, and Namestnikov. I'm not saying it's going to happen.
I think the cost
Exactly.
of Lindholm is too great.
I'm not on the Lindholm train. I think the cost will be too high there.
I mean, it depends. Are you getting the Lindholm from 3 years ago when he was a different player than he is now? I mean, he hasn't shown signs of being that player anymore.
Has anybody shown signs of being that player in Calgary right now?
No, fair enough. So you're maybe thinking you acquire somebody from Calgary and you hook them up to the rejuvenation machine that you have handy in your house there, Dave, and all of a sudden he becomes what he once was. But that's a big risk to take at a big cost, likely. Whereas you can go get a guy.
Because you're talking about a first rounder as opposed to Sean Monahan, who might just be a second rounder, right?
Well, so if you're the Jets, you already own Montreal's second round pick. Can't you just flip that back to them? I mean, I'm not saying it's that simple or that it could happen tomorrow, but if you're the Jets, you're dangling that second round pick that belonged to Montreal, similar to how the Jets, got that pick back from the Rangers that they used to acquire. I guess that was Kevin Hayes, if I'm not mistaken, right? When they traded the first rounder to the Rangers for Kevin Hayes, then they got it back in the Trouba trade.
Right.
Then I think I'm getting my timeline right on that
no,
one.
You're right.
Okay. Again, it seems like that cost is going to be a lot less than the Lindholm cost. Just given where the reputations of the players. Lindholm. Unless you're going a layer deep, you hear Elias Lindholm. Not the same guy he was 2 years ago, whereas Sean Monahan, in fact, has probably improved his standing from 2 years ago.
Well, and again, I think, the thing with Monahan that's interesting, Drew mentioned this, he's in the last year of his contract because didn't he sign a 1-year deal with Montreal last summer?
1-year deal.
Less than $1 million a year.
1.97 or something
and
like
he's
that.
on a team that obviously has been out of a playoff spot for the majority of the season. So he's motivated to join a team that is at first overall in the league, right? And again, this is all speculation, guys, right? Like we're not, this isn't the, Jets should acquire Sean Monahan show. All I'm saying is that Sean Monahan is a heck of a hockey player. He's having a good season for the Habs, and I don't think the price tag would be that high for him.
No, well, and as C-Mac just said, it definitely sounds right out of Kevin Cheveldayoff's playbook, right? Is to do something like that. And so you do that, maybe you make a depth add on the D.
They have to find this year's Jordy Ben, right? Somebody like that.
Yeah, but look, I mean, it's hard to argue right now with what the Jets are doing, and the Jets are only the first place team and setting all sorts of records. But you don't win the Stanley Cup in Game 41. You don't win the Stanley Cup in January, so we know it's going to be harder for this Jets club. Now, one of the things JP Vijay, who obviously played the game, talks about is the idea that when you are already a stingy team, that's an advantage for your club and playing sound defensive hockey. I mean, even in games where the Jets aren't playing particularly well, right? Even against Chicago, and we know Chicago doesn't exactly, they have a laundry list of injured guys, but they don't have a laundry list of guys who are NHLers in that lineup. But ultimately, even when they were down, they're down 1-0. This team isn't, being blown out as Dan talked about in that last hour. So right now the Jets are chugging along. And so it's hard to argue, this team needs to do this, this, and this. And again, you don't obviously taking anything off the current roster to make a trade. That's the other thing you have to think about, right? So a team like Calgary, I think, is going to want the world for Lindholm. And look, Kevin Cheveldayoff is essentially looking for this year's Paul Stastny, really, guys. Like that's the kind of move he's going to be looking, a guy who's going to fit in well, who's going to mix with this group properly. And again, going to be able to elevate this group and get them to that next level. And that's what he's looking for, I would suspect.
Let's go to break. Our good friend Anthony Sanfilipo is going to join us on the other side to talk about the Flyers. They're the Jets' opponent tonight.
Just worried, guys. I don't think we have a lot to talk about with Anthony.
No. As per usual, there's nothing going on in Philadelphia, but I think we'll somehow struggle through that interview with our good buddy. Stay with us. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live on this Saturday morning.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Whoa, Ezzy, everything okay? You look stressed.
Of course I'm stressed. We're moving, the house is upside down, the kids failed miserably at packing the fine china, and my life is in chaos. Chaos!
Yes, that does sound like a problem.
What am I going to do?
Ezzy, relax. Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage is the answer. With 60 years of experience in moving Manitobans and a track record of exemplary customer service, one call to Rolly's and your stress is gone. No job is too big or too small. Just visit Rollies.com and they will take it from there.
Thanks, Dave, and thank you, Rollies Transfer Moving and Storage, online at Rollies.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
"I sure do."
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
This January at Boston Pizza, every day is Pasta Tuesday. That means BP's famous pastas start at just $11.99 every single day. Create your own or go gourmet for just a few bucks more. Come on in for Pasta Tuesday pricing any day. Only this January at Boston Pizza.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Bottom of the hour. That's hour number 2. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mandel, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Reminder, later tonight, the Illegal Curve post-game show. Right about 8:45 p.m., Dave and Ezzy going to drive that bus tonight after tonight's Jets and Flyers game. The Flyers come into tonight's contest third in the Metropolitan Division, a surprising place for them in the standings, given how most people thought their season would go. To talk about the Flyers, we're thrilled to welcome back to our program our very good friend, someone that we've been talking to for close to 15 years on this show. It's our buddy from Crossing Broad, Anthony Sanfilipo. Anthony, great to see you this morning. How are things?
I'm doing all right. Just had the last arrows pulled out of but no, I'm doing well. You know what I learned, guys? I learned that in a football mad city, the best way to get people to not talk about football and to talk about hockey is to get screamed at by John Tortorella. So we figured that out. We learned something there.
And I mean, again, that we'll talk about that interaction, or you can ask you about it to start. I mean,
interaction is a cute word for it there, Drew.
Well, you stood there and you took it, which is an important thing to do as a writer. You have to stand there and sometimes take the slings and arrows when the head coach delivers it. But at the same time, just because Tortorella doesn't agree with reporting, and I think this is an important distinction for people to remember, just because the head coach doesn't agree with reporting or doesn't like what something was reported doesn't make it factually incorrect, because we we've gone back a long way. Illegal Curve and Anthony and Frank Saravelli when he used to work for the Daily News and everything else. And there's been plenty of times where you guys have reported things in that Philadelphia marketplace that the organization and the coaching staff don't like, but at the same time also had a strong base in reality attached to. So two things can be true at the same time.
That's true. Not my first rodeo with getting yelled at. That's for
Anthony, when we first had you on back in the college Kick FM days, you were writing for the Delaware County Daily Times for those who don't know. So Drew's right. I mean, we go back 14 years. And I was going to say, Anthony, I believe Torts is in town now because they were in Minnesota last night. So I can head downtown and confront him if you want.
You don't want to do that. You don't want to confront Torts. Come on now.
As he's been on the receiving, He's been on the receiving end.
The Rangers coach Richie bugged me, and I think we've talked about this before, Anthony, because back in the day when you used to travel to Winnipeg, we probably talked about this. When Torts was the coach of the Rangers, Rich said, "Why don't you ask Torts why he only has a couple of coaches on the bench?" Because
one assistant coach, I think.
Right, because obviously most teams have two assistants and one head coach. The Jets actually have three with Marty Johnston, Brad Lauer, and Scott Arneal. And Torts said, "What the hell kind of question is that?" And it was a little bit viral on YouTube. So yes, I've been on the receiving end, Anthony. So I do have some arrows in my back as well.
Yeah. Yes. Not to the same degree that you experienced it this week, but all good. Yeah, of course it's all good. What I wanted to ask you about, Anthony, though, so like the noise around the Flyers this week, and not necessarily their fault with Cutter Gauthier declaring he didn't want to play for them, and them making the decision to trade him and acquire Jamie Drysdale. But and we'll get into the nuts and bolts of that. But has that sort of taken the luster off the shine that has been the Flyers season to this point? Because this is a Flyers team that most people had pegged for a strong rebuild year. Meanwhile, they're still third in the Metropolitan Division. They've been exceeding, I think, everyone's wildest expectations, yet that isn't the topic right now. Instead, it's all this other noise that took effect this week.
Yeah, I mean, I it's interesting because I think this was kind of like a uniting thing in our city. The Flyers, as you guys know, we've talked about this in recent seasons, but the Flyers had kind of fallen a little bit off of the public radar in Philadelphia. Sure. I mean, it really had. I mean, it was such a bad situation with the previous leadership and as bad as the team was, and nobody really cared about them. And then you bring in Keith Jones and Danny Briere, and now Dan Hilferty's running the show as the CEO of Comcast Spectacor, and they kind of like try to do some things to bring the fans back, and they're getting some good crowds down there, whatever. But you get a player who doesn't want to play in your city, nothing unites a fan base in Philadelphia like something like that. They all rallied around the Flyers and got behind them. And now this is the first time a lot of people are taking notice of the hockey team, and they're supporting it. And then all of a sudden it's like, you look at the standings and go, wait a second, I thought this team was bad. and they're not a bad team. They're not a top team by any stretch of the imagination, but they're right in the middle of the pack. And that's a little bit of a surprise for a lot of people. And we were talking about this on the podcast yesterday. The thing that we were all wrong about and that we thought was going to be the worst part of this team coming in and why they were going to be bad this year has been the defense. It has been surprisingly good. And that's a lot of credit to Tortorella and to his assistant coach. It's funny you talk about assistant coaches, but Brad Shaw, who runs the defensive side of things as assistant coach, they've worked wonders with a bunch of guys who you thought were just guys. Look, Travis Sanheim's had a real nice breakout year, right? I mean, he's had a real nice year this year again, to really kind of become a little bit more of what they thought he was when they drafted him in the first round. Cam York has developed really nicely, but it's more than those two. When you look at guys like Sean Walker, who was a throw-in in the Provorov trade, and Nick Seeler, who's just been like a number 7 defenseman his entire career, right? Those guys, getting Rasmus Ristolainen to play with more consistency on a regular basis, and then developing a kid like Igor Zamula. I mean, that whole group, and now you added Jamie Drysdale into the mix as well. It's actually becoming a strength of the team when at the beginning of the year we thought it was their most glaring weakness. So kudos to the team for getting that part of the game going in the right direction.
Would you agree, Anthony, that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts when it comes to the Flyers?
1,000%. I mean, who's a star on this team? And Konechny's having a really nice year, right? He's a good goal scorer. But, I mean, if you put Travis Konechny on almost any playoff team, he's not a top-line winger. He's just not a second-line guy, right? I mean, so he's probably their best offensive player. Couturier is Couturier. You know what he's going to be. And he's a great story, probably an underreported story in the sense that he almost missed 2 full years of hockey and then came back, and it didn't take long for him to get back to being, a Selke Trophy kind of player. Not to say that he's going to be nominated for that this year, but I think that he can get back on that track in the next year or two, as long as he stays healthy. But he's had a really, really good year. But other than that, I mean, really, who are your stars? And so it's been a good team defense, and they've gotten very good goaltending. And lo and behold, they're in the middle of this whole thing, and nobody expected it. It's kind of a fun story to follow along this year. It really is. I think they deserve people's attention.
Anthony, you mentioned the defense, and you went through the Flyers' top 6 defensemen. And I wanted to ask you about Jamie Drysdale, because obviously a lot of people in the chat, a lot of Jets fans that are going to be going to the game tonight downtown between the Jets and the Flyers. I mean, this is going to be his 3rd game with the Flyers. And I got a chance to watch the majority of that game between the Flyers and the Wild last night. I mean, what a comeback victory for the Flyers. It was on nationally on Sportsnet. So I think, quite a few people were watching that, obviously, with the Jets not playing. And you mentioned Igor Zamula, and I'll be honest with you, I'd never heard of this guy. A couple years ago, and I think he only played parts of. I'm just looking at. He played 26 games prior to this season. He's played 33 games for the Flyers this year, and a few things I wanted to mention. Jamie Drysdale coughs up the puck to, I think it was Joel Eriksson Ek in overtime, right?
Yeah,
and then he gets back and he makes a play on Eriksson Ek and doesn't take a penalty. For those who weren't watching, so he makes a really nice play after he coughs up the puck and uses that good skating and takes the puck away from Eriksson Ek and doesn't take a penalty. And then it's Zamula out there at on 3-on-3, or I guess it was 4-on-3 overtime.
Yep.
Because Matt Zuccarello took that penalty, that tripping penalty, right?
Yep.
And then it's Joel Farabee who tips the puck in. It was his 2nd goal of the game. And then he had the game winner. So, I mean, it just looks like, for the last few years, Anthony, it seems like that Flyers team probably would have lost that game in regulation. But it looks like they're building on something here. And so the question I wanted to ask you was about Drysdale and what's kind of stood out to you in his first 2 games. And the fact that the Flyers were able to get him and not give up a player who's currently on the roster, to me, was significant. Look, Cutter Gauthier is a good prospect, for sure. But the Flyers are able to acquire a top pairing defenseman without giving up somebody who's currently on their active roster.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a good point. And then one other thing that I don't know if you guys get this kind of pay attention to this kind of information, but it's kind of like a little thing locally. Is in the offseason, the Flyers brought in former Ducks GM Bob Murray as a senior advisor, and don't lose sight of the importance of that in this trade, because he knew he had more intel than most teams would have on a prospect from another team, like Jamie Drysdale was. So, he knows a lot more about the kid and what he's like, and what's, what his strengths and what his weaknesses are. So it really kind of gave the Flyers a good foundation to work on, not just scouting him playing 10 games for the Ducks this season. And then you watch him play, and getting to watch him play. The first thing that just jumps out of that is just how smooth of a skater he is. It's unbelievable how good of a skater he is. My partner on the podcast, Chris Terrian, played in the league for a long time, and he says to me, he said he skates like coffee. He skates like Niedermeyer.
Whoa.
Like, I mean, You're talking about like comparisons, not to say that he's going to be that good of a player, but his skating ability is very similar. He says what it is it's, you see a guy pick up speed while he's gliding. He said that's a very rare thing in the sport of hockey, and it helps him to get that first pass out of the zone. It helps him to get up ice. And we heard Torts say he's a candidate to be a rover, which is something that they really want. The Flyers play a little bit of a run and gun style, which is we are so not used to seeing that in Philadelphia, right? I mean, it's very, we've always been big, heavy, physical team, but to see a run and gun style, And so you plug a Jamie Drysdale with his skating ability into that and say, go up ice, young man, even take some chances, gamble a little bit. You're going to see him pick up a lot of points in a lot of ways, like Travis Sanheim has done this year. Although I think Drysdale probably has a little bit better of an offensive skill set than even Sanheim, who's had a really nice year. So there's a lot of reasons to be excited about adding him right away and not be a prospect that's 1-2 years off.
Anthony, we got to ask you about the goaltending. You need good goaltending in this league to do anything. The Jets here, of course, have that in Connor Hellebuck and Laurent Brossoit. I've been a big fan of Carter Hart for many years, and it seems like he's having a good season. Samuel Ersson, the fifth rounder. Jets fans know something about fifth rounders coming in and becoming something special. So what do the Flyers have in him? And was he expected to kind of take this jump and be the backup to Hart this season?
Yeah. So, last year during a very bad year for the Flyers, Ersson got to play a little bit, and people were telling me around the team, like, this kid's going to be a number one goalie in the NHL. He's really got that ability, and they've really kind of put it into a situation this year where it's been a little bit 50-50 between him and Hart. I mean, Hart's still the starter. Hart's still going to get a few more starts. Carter had an illness and an injury earlier in the year, so Ersson ended up starting. I think it was like 5 in a row, and you really got to see how good of a goalie he could be. He's solid. He's a really, really solid goaltender, and he's a nice compliment. You want to talk about the defense being really good? Goaltending has been just as good. I mean, you look at the game the other night, the last home game that they had, and Ersson plays in that game against Montreal, gives up 2 goals in the first period. Doesn't make a save. They were the only 2 shots Montreal had. Both were goofy tips. One was a really weird deflection that popped up in the air and then landed behind Ersson, but he didn't make a save in the first period. You get to the third period, though, Montreal's pushing a little bit, and he makes a huge save on a breakaway. He makes 2 big saves in overtime and then shuts the door in the shootout. The guy is really good on breakaways, really good one-on-one. And so if you get an opportunity to see that tonight, it'd be interesting to see how the Jets offensive skill players against Ersson on a breakaway would be a nice little matchup. But he's been awesome. And most teams don't have what Winnipeg and Philadelphia have, in the sense that you can rely on either goalie in any given game. And so it's a good problem to have, I think, for both teams, really.
Anthony Sanfilipo is our guest Saturday morning. This is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. He covers the Philadelphia Flyers for CrossingBroad.com, the Jets and the Flyers, later tonight in downtown Winnipeg. Anthony, so let's get back to the Gauthier for Drysdale trade. We know the sort of the on-ice impact. We know that Drysdale is going to certainly support and help what had been the NHL's worst statistical power play at the bottom of the league in success rate on the power play. Why does this trade happen? Cutter Gauthier has said some words. They've been a bit of a word salad. You reported that, Kevin Hayes had an impact on this trade. As this week has gone on, are we any closer to really figuring out why Cutter Gauthier decided that he didn't want to be a member of the Philadelphia Flyers?
No, we don't know with any 100% certainty, and that's because he won't say. His agency won't say. Nobody will say, come out and say what it is. So, we're left to do some digging. And look, there's a lot of different things that came into play here. Let's go back to when he was drafted. He was drafted and he said, I was born to be a Flyer. Puts the jersey on at the draft. It's like, this guy is going to be great. And then what happens in the year after that? Because let's be honest, the one thing that we do know is the last time he talked to the Flyers was after World Championships in May of 23. Did not speak to them since in any capacity. Wouldn't talk to John LeClaire or Patrick Sharp, who were like player development guys for the Flyers. Wouldn't talk to Keith Jones and Danny Briere, who flew to Sweden for the World Juniors this year to talk to him. Wouldn't talk to any of them. Okay. So we know that what happened, we have to figure out what happened between the draft in 22 and May of 23. One of the things we know now, which came out, I guess, a day after or 2 days after the trade, was that he wanted to play in Philly last year initially, and that the Flyers wouldn't guarantee him a spot on the roster. Really, just what it really comes down to. They basically said, no, you got to come in, you got to earn it. And if you don't earn it, you're going to go play in the AHL. Don't think he liked that. Don't think he liked, I think he wanted to be treated a little bit different, being the 5th overall pick in the draft. And then you combine that with the fact that, look, and what I reported about Kevin Hayes, and I want to clear this up. I don't want anyone to think that I was saying that here's Kevin Hayes holding his hand all the way through over the last year, right? Taking him right up until the trade, like, don't sign with Philly. Don't sign with Philly. That certainly was not what I was saying. But what I was saying was, the Flyers originally, when he was drafted, they asked Kevin Hayes to kind of befriend Cutter Gauthier. Said, look, you're a veteran. You're a leader on this team. Kevin Hayes at the time was an alternate captain. Okay. Mm-hmm. You went to Boston College. See if you can make a relationship with this kid and get him excited about coming to play to Philadelphia. And so they made that connection. They went and played golf together. Right. And Cutter Gauthier was quoted as saying, hey, he's like a mentor. It's great to have his phone number in my contacts. I can reach out to him at any time. So those things all happened. But then what happened with Hayes over the course of the following season, once Torts gets in as the coach? He gets basically treated poorly by Torts. I mean, he was a Flyers all-star who was a healthy scratch. He was benched for periods at times. Those things all happened. Well, look, guys, I know, everyone knows in the world of sports, not just in hockey, players talk to each other and they ask each other all the time. Hey, what's it like playing in that city? What's it like playing for that coach? What's this teammate like? They all talk. It's a very little, it's a small world, a small community. So you combine the thing of what's going on with I want to play and they're not guaranteeing me a spot. And then you hear, maybe Torts is not the greatest coach to play for. He's really hard on players. He's a difficult guy. And you kind of put all those things together and you say, well, do I really want to go there? And I think that's ultimately what it is. It's a bunch of little things that get kind of put together to add up to maybe I won't succeed in Philadelphia. So I'm not going to play for you guys. Send me somewhere else.
Anthony, I wanted to add, sorry, Drew, go ahead if you have another one.
I was just going to say there's not a lot of precedence for this happening in recent memory, to my mind, especially to a large market city like Philadelphia. Yeah. You can maybe, look, we here in Winnipeg know that there's players who don't necessarily want to sign long-term here. Pierre-Luc Dubois comes to mind, Jacob Trouba comes to mind, but they play out their term here and then they depart. It's sort of relatively unprecedented for a player who's never established himself in the NHL to start dictating things like this. It is a bizarre situation. I'm sure the Flyers are sitting there saying, what did we do wrong? Or, trying to both figure out, is this a situation of the kid is entitled, or did they actively do something wrong that needs to be rectified moving forward?
Yeah, I don't get the sense that the Flyers really did anything wrong here. I really don't. And I think that this is an entitlement thing that is growing in U.S. college athletes. I mean, when you look at other sports, you look at like the NIL money and how all that works and the transfer portals, and kids are just like, you're not making me play enough. All right, I'm leaving. I'm going here. And you're getting all, dozens and dozens and dozens of transfers. They're getting paid money to go to schools now. It's just it's a whole different environment in college athletics. And it hasn't really creeped into the world of hockey just yet in college, but I think you're going to start seeing it, and this might be the first shoe to drop in that regard with college hockey in the U.S. And I think that's part of it. I think it's a total entitlement thing in that regard.
Look, there's an argument to be made, and we're sort of veering off, but bear with us.
When do I get to ask my question, Drew? Come on.
Sorry. There's an argument to be made that drafts in general should go by the wayside, and players should be able to pick their destinations within parameters, because not every player can play for the same team. And that's in all sports. But I mean, I don't get the sense that Cutter Gauthier is trying to be a pioneer or the leader of a revolutionary charge. I just think that he seems like he's more just, for whatever reason, upset with the Flyers organization.
I mean, yes. I mean, I look at it from this perspective, and look, it's happened in other sports as well. I mean, people want to make the comparison to Lindros, but it was different there. Lindros told Quebec not to draft him. Don't draft me, and they did anyway, right?
Elway and the Colts going way back,
right.
Other instances.
Yes,
and all due respect to Cutter Gauthier, like
Yeah.
Eric Lindros is a Hall of Famer. The fact
Yeah.
that, people are comparing that, Anthony, I think you would agree. It's like, okay, guys, like this is not the same situation here.
Exactly. It's not the same situation. And again, he wanted to play when he was drafted. He wanted to be a Flyer. He said it. I was born to be a Flyer. So I mean, it's again, that's the difference between those two. We had it with we've had it in Philadelphia with J.D. Drew in baseball. I mean, Eli Manning didn't want to play with the Chargers and forced the trade to the Giants. These things do happen from time to time, but I think you're going to start to see it with more regularity. I think that there is that what Drew was just saying. There is that belief that's out there that these kids should have more of a determination of where picking where they get to go, as opposed to I automatically have to play for such and such a team.
Mm-hmm.
But my response to that is this: you're 19 years old. You're lucky enough. You're fortunate enough to be drafted into the best league in the world. Establish yourself first. Then, if you want to force your way somewhere and say, listen, this isn't working out for me here, I want to go play somewhere else, fine. Do it that way. But don't try and make it out to be at 19 that I can dictate where I go. And then you're only making it harder on yourself, because then the spotlight's going to be even harsher. Oh, this is the guy that didn't want to play for that team. And then you go and look and see, oh, is he good? Is he any good? No, he's not. Now it's and then you don't get as much rope. You don't get as much rope to develop at that point. I think it's bad for yourself. You should really have the opportunity to show yourself play first, and then make a decision at that point.
And Anthony, I want to ask you a question about not about Cutter Gauthier, but just as an example, Dave M and I were talking about this yesterday or 2 days ago, after the Jets-Hawks game. Look at some of the best players on the Jets right now, whether it's Josh Morrissey, whether it's Kyle Connor or Cole Perfetti. They played in the American Hockey League.
Yeah.
Before they starred for the Jets, right? So unless you're Patrick Laine, who went right into the NHL at a second overall pick, most guys play in the American Hockey League before they establish themselves or before they get that shot in the NHL. So again, I think Cutter Gauthier is going to be a good player. That's not what I'm saying here. I'm just saying that to just think that you are entitled, I think is the word you used.
Yeah.
To just get a spot in the NHL, I mean, I think is naive, right? That's all I wanted to say about that.
There are special players who get to come into the league straight from junior or straight from college. Whatever.
Connor Bedard, Connor McDavid.
Yes, there are special players. And
Patrick Laine, like I said. But yeah,
yes.
I think, Dave covers the American Hockey League more than anybody, or just as much as somebody who covers the American Hockey League a lot. He goes to all the Moose games, and he'll tell you, Cole Perfetti, I mean, he had to learn how to play the pro game in the AHL, and now he's having a breakout year. But I wanted to ask you about Bobby Brink, because obviously, Brink was a healthy scratch last night. I think you knew we were going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
It's another torts-related question, but
yeah,
I mean, was he just benched, Anthony, because he hasn't been playing well lately? I've obviously, I watched the game last night, but I don't watch a lot of Flyers. And so why was he benched last night by torts? And do you expect him to play tonight versus the Jets?
I think the timing was totally torts making sending a message, the timing of it. But if you go back, we had been talking about this for a little over a week, because we had heard rumblings that they were considering pulling him out of the lineup because he has not been playing well. I thought he was a little bit better in his last game before he got scratched in Minnesota. I thought he was a little bit better against Montreal. But if you take the games in totality, he's really struggled probably for the last 7, 8, 9 games. And they don't want young players to kind of get into bad habits. And so they're gonna make a young player come out of the lineup and reset. And while they were thinking about it, they were thinking about doing it for that home game against Montreal and didn't. They were thinking about possibly sending him down to the AHL. They didn't. But the message gets sent, we're going to have all this family show up in Minnesota. You're not playing. And while you could look at it and say that sucks for the kid, that sucks for his family who made the trip to the game and everything else, it does. But this is the NHL, man. This is the same thing I said when they did it to Sanheim, when he did it to Sanheim in Calgary last year. Mm-hmm. It's the NHL. Get over it. Play better. And they're going to have their conversations with you. Like it's not like Torts and Bobby Brink aren't talking, and then he just pulls the rug out from under him in Minnesota last night. So yeah, it's a tough league, and if you want to stay in it, it's not just about getting there; it's staying there. If you want to stay in the league, you got to do things the right way. And so I look, it worked with Sanheim. I don't see why it couldn't work with Bobby Brink as well. I expect that he'll get back in. I do. I don't know how long they can go with 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. I think you're going to kill your forwards with the amount of minutes that they're playing because you can't roll a regular fourth line. So I think that they eventually are going to have to go 12 forward 6D again. It might be tonight, especially on a back-to-back, So I think he'll play tonight. I can't say that with any certainty, though.
Anthony, just one last question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot here because this player is somebody that not a lot of people in Winnipeg or Manitoba have heard of, but definitely in Philadelphia, they've heard of this guy, Massimo Rizzo.
Yes.
He's a guy that they acquired from the Carolina Hurricanes. He's currently leading the NCAA in scoring, or he was leading the NCAA in scoring. I had his numbers up here. He's got 34 points in 21 games. He's a 22-year-old. He was a late draft pick of the Carolina Hurricanes, and then the Flyers acquired him. I forget for who it was, but it was they acquired him from the Hurricanes. And I wanted to ask you, do we know, I know some people are now paranoid that maybe the Flyers aren't going to sign Massimo Rizzo. We should mention, too, he played with Bobby Brink at the University of Denver. But do we have any inclination at all what's going to happen with him, because he obviously hasn't signed his contract yet with the Flyers, right?
Yeah, no. So that was if you go back, that was in the summer they tried to make the trade, the Tony DeAngelo trade to Carolina for Massimo Rizzo, and the league basically put the kibosh on it because DeAngelo originally was acquired from Carolina, and they were like, well, it hasn't been long enough since that happened, and so whatever. And so Carolina and the Flyers basically made a make-good deal to eventually send Rizzo back to the Flyers after the fact. Well, I mean, the league was so wrong on that. It was different general managers, different everything, right? I mean, it was just and it was only off by like a month. It was so silly. But anyway, the Flyers were really high on Rizzo. They thought that there was something there that they liked a lot. They really wanted to get him in the system as soon as possible. And then, of course, he has having this great season. He played Spengler Cup, so that was a thing too. And they like him a lot. And part of the reason that I think they felt even more comfortable making the trade of Cutter Gauthier when they did is you have a kid like Rizzo having the year he's having, a kid like Denver Barkey for the London Knights is having the year that he's having there as well. Also play similar positions, and you sit there and say, we have some prospects who can play wing and score that we think that can come into the league eventually and be here again and make a difference. They feel comfortable with it, and that's why they were cool giving up, getting a defenseman for Gauthier. So, I think that they think Rizzo can be something, and I think that they will figure something out and work something out. He'll be beloved in Philly just because of his name. He sounds like he's from South Philly. Right?
Well,
I think he might be Italian, right?
Yeah, maybe.
like Big Dom on the sideline for the Eagles, except he's not on the sideline anymore, and the Eagles can't win without him.
Exactly.
Anthony Sanfilipo covers the Flyers for CrossingBroad.com. He's a longtime great friend of this show. It's always great catching up with you, buddy. Thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy tonight's contest. We look forward to reading about it from the Flyers' perspective, and we'll get together real soon.
Yeah, absolutely, boys. And I got to tell you, the one thing, this is the first time I've ever been on your show where you guys have like the best team in hockey, and I don't know how you're handling it. So it's
people are pretty excited here, Anthony. I got to tell you, people are fired up. It's Jets fans are flying high for sure.
You guys all have smiles on your face. It's unbelievable. It's great. It's
even
good.
Drew, who's usually usually that curmudgeon, right? So
the only reason I have a smile on my face is because we're with Anthony. As soon as you're gone, I'm back to my usual dour, negative mood. Don't get mistaken. This is because of you, buddy.
Oh, all good. Thanks, man. Appreciate
Negative
it.
Mindy is what we call him, Anthony.
Thanks,
Take care,
Anthony.
boys. See
Take
ya.
care. Yeah. Our good friend Anthony Sanfilipo joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Dave M., do you want to do a Moose Minute from last night's Moose game, or do you want to do two tonight?
Two tonight.
It was that bad last night again, was it?
No, I mean, there's stuff to talk about, but we can talk about it tonight. The show's over.
Okay. We'll chalk that up. That'll be during the post-game show tonight after the Jets and the Flyers. So again, it is a shortly after 6 p.m. puck drop between those two teams in downtown Winnipeg. If you're just joining us now, no Mark Scheifele for the Winnipeg Jets tonight. So some roster questions. Some
Ehlers is a question mark.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
I don't know why Ezzy did that.
At the very least, we can talk about that Brad Lambert goal.
Yeah, well, we can. The Moose spotted. I'll just be quick. The Moose spotted Laval, a 3-0 lead. The Moose are mired in a losing streak to end all losing streaks, unfortunately for them, and it doesn't look like it's getting any better. They got Ville Heinola back from the Jets now that he's been medically cleared. That was one of the other things that Kevin Cheveldayoff revealed. So he got assigned to the Moose. It's weird though, because some of the language being used was incorrect. So folks were like, he's on a conditioning assignment. It's like, he's not on a conditioning assignment. He's been assigned. He's there to get his conditioning back.
Yes.
But anyways, he didn't play last night. Of course, they lost Rasmus Kupari. So no Dominic Tonnato, no Axel Jonsson-Fjällby. They're absent a few veterans. And of course, Chaz Lucia is still dealing with an ankle situation. Wyatt Bongiovanni, a knee situation. So they're definitely lacking in some forward depth. Moose, like I said, spotted the Rocket a 3-0 lead. Tried to get it back. Couple power play goals in the second period. CJ Cease, he got his fourth with a nice little goal mouth scramble. And as he said, if you haven't seen it, check it out on Twitter. Brad Lambert revs up the engine from the Moose end. It was a little Nikolai Ehlers-esque, if you will, and he puts it home on a nice little goal, nice little celebration by Brad Lambert. That was his team-leading 12th goal of the season. Assist to Nikita Chibrikov. So those two of the 2022 first rounder and 2021 second rounder combining, and they're the co-leaders right now for the Moose in points with 25 each. So the Moose aren't doing well. The kids are showing they're all right, and they'll try and end the losing streak tonight in Laval with the rematch. I'm not sure. I think puck drops 6, but I can't tell. I can't remember exactly when it is.
Well, whatever the puck drop is, we will have coverage, of course, of the Moose Laval game on the Illegal Curve post game.
They lost, by the way, 5-2.
Yeah. Sorry. They ended up losing, right.
I should say, so they made it 3-2, and then 20 seconds after Lambert's goal, they gave up a goal to make it 4-2, and then Laval added another goal in the third to make it a 5-2 game. So they ended up losing the game, if you couldn't tell. And now, like I said, their losing streak is, I think, 6 games. They're 12-18 right now. So 12-19. It's not good right now in Mooseland. The only good news, if you want to think about it, is if the Jets get healthy, Moose get some players back. The Moose really, the Central, especially the bottom 3 teams are weak, so they're not completely out of a chance for making a playoff spot.
There you go. An abbreviated Minuk Moose Minute, a more fulsome one coming later tonight on the Illegal Curve post-game show following the Jets and the Flyers. 8:45, give or take a couple of minutes, back here on our YouTube channel. Dave and Ezzy will drive the Illegal Curve post-game bus tonight, and then I'll return on Tuesday for the Jets and the Islanders.
Andrew, you're going for a sound bath tonight, right?
A sound bath. What is a sound bath?
Google it. I've gone for one before with Naomi. Google it.
Okay.
A sound bath?
Somehow
I'm relaxing. I fell asleep during our sound bath.
I'm somewhat terrified, but yet intrigued at the same time.
I assume this show was a sound bath.
Is that like a sensory deprivation sort of thing? Is that what it is?
Sound bath is a meditative practice that involves lying in a reclining position and listening to soothing, overlapping vibrations from traditional instruments.
Yeah, that's what this show is, Ezzy.
I need more information as to how when you and Naomi did this. But
here's a sponsor.
It's not an anaerobic activity, Drew.
There we go. Big thanks to our sponsors. They make the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, the post-game show, and the website a possibility. That's our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. 2 shows tonight. Chris Locke is performing. Very few tickets available. Get them, rumorscomedyclub.com. Grid Park, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway. They're the title sponsor of the post-game show. Tough Duck. Get your Tough Duck comments ready. You might walk away with a Tough Duck toque on the post-game show. Boston Pizza. We'll be at Boston Pizza on the Wednesday between the Jets and the Leafs. That's our next live on location broadcast.
No
Boston
wings for
Pizza.
Drew.
Taylor Avenue. Be there for Illegal Curve live on location. Seagram's, they're the sponsor of the Seagram shot of the game. Rolly's Transfer. And of course, if you're looking for a beer to drink tonight, we strongly recommend Illegal Curve Lager at Farmery Brewing, number 2 Donald Street, or available on all of the delivery apps. Big thanks to all of you for joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Big thanks to Dan Robertson. Big thanks to Anthony Sanfilipo. It was a hell of a fun show. Podcast will be available shortly after we end, and the immediate replay on YouTube, of course, immediately available. That's why it's the immediate replay. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, tell your friends, tell your family the best place to be Saturday mornings. And again, after each and every Winnipeg Jets game is the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. Dave and Ezzy will be back later tonight, 8:45 p.m. with the Illegal Curve post-game show. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. Until later tonight, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.